On this episode of ResiWeek, we recap ISE 2025, we talk about HDR10 Plus, and Sony didn't actually kill Blu-ray. All this more on this episode of ResiWeek. This is ResiWeek, episode 472. I'm a sucker for Blu-ray. Welcome to this episode of ResiWeek. This is your weekly roundup of all the latest news and stories for the residential AV industry. I'm your host, Matt D. Scott for AVNation.tv, and this week I'm pleased to be joined by two of my good friends. First, we have Mr. Jeremy Glowacki. He's the editor-in-chief over at Projector Central. How you doing, Jeremy?
Doing well, Matt. Thanks for having me back on. It's great to see you guys.
Thank you for being here. And then we've got my new friend, Mr. Rob Jones. He's the president at Mangetar. How you doing, Rob?
Well, I could complain, but they never listen. So we just cruise on through.
That's how it works in my house, too. So I get it. All right, gentlemen, we are going to kick this off with a story that comes to us from Hidden Wires. ISE 2025 surpassed all expectations with record-breaking figures. They had somewhere in the neighborhood of, I just lost it, over 85,000 unique verified visitors from 168 countries, which is a 15.5% increase from the previous year. Go read through it if you really want to nerd out on which days had the highest attendance, et cetera, et cetera. Their total number of registrations reached over 110,000 registrations with 185,000 visits across the 4 days. Jeremy, let me start with you on this. ISE continues to have increased growth kind of year over year. We've watched this happen. They moved the show away from Amsterdam to Barcelona to accommodate even more growth. Is there a plateau for this show, or is it going to just continue to expand and expand and expand until it might rival CES?
Yeah, as far as growth is considered, I know that moving to Barcelona was a big change for them. And I think when the one time I've been to ISE was in Amsterdam. It was perhaps the coldest I've ever been in my life, just because I decided to wear a coat that I thought would look cool in Europe, basically, instead of something that actually was warm. And there was some kind of weird, like, Russian Arctic front that came down and just made everything cold and damp, and it was horrible. And I was there with my wife, and we were trying to go to museums in between, being at the trade show. So juggling work and fun was not easy either. But the show was crazy. Like, it was so many different halls and layers of places that didn't seem like a normal trade show, even in Vegas standards, like where you're going to different places and different halls. Didn't really care for that venue. I think that this has been a huge upgrade for them from what I've heard. So I don't know what their capacity limits are, but I think that from a popularity standpoint, it just, the blend of the residential, which is very small relative to the commercial, and the commercial together, basically Infocom, Cedia together in one, is kind of just a magic combination for that market. And it's the only thing of its kind there. So I think that as long as there's new technology being developed, it's not a CES in the sense that it's a consumer show. I don't think it's going to turn into that, because that just broadens out. Consumer technology just broadens so much beyond what ISE really is focused on. I don't think that it's going to grow into that, but it is going to continue to be successful. I think that market is just starved for this kind of a venue and opportunity to see the technology in one place. You'll never see it turn into that in the US, unfortunately, because Cedia and Infocom have just grown up separately, and I think that's what will stay the same. But it's great to see that is so successful there. It's great for the vendors, manufacturers that make that trip. It can't be cheap to go overseas to display your wares, even if you have international folks to help cover some of the personnel. But so I'm glad they're getting their money's worth, it sounds like.
Yeah, that's true. Just as a frame of reference, Mobile World Congress, which is one of the other really, really large European shows, it's held in Barcelona as well. Last year it had 101,000 attendees. So they definitely can grow and continue to scale that. So it'll be interesting to see if they hit that note. Rob, let me come over to you on this. We talked pre-show. None of us attended this year. Rob, as a North American, business, as a manufacturer, what do they have to do, or is there anything that they can do to try and pull more North American integrators, more North American manufacturers, maybe like yourself, to go and exhibit at that show? Is it just a complicated thing?
I think I can tell you about what Mangetar does and how we approached it. We have a distributor for the territory, and it made sense for us to go to that distributor and say, hey, let us buy X amount of space with the booth, or let's add on X amount of space to your booth, and then we'll exhibit our wares there, and then we'll send a human or two. That works well for us. Depending on what your kind of position is, what you're selling, it can be certainly expensive, especially if you don't have any real cause in Europe. Anything, I don't know that there's much there that you're not going to see at CEDIA per se or CES for North Americans. So I think it would really kind of have to be justified from an installer standpoint, but from a manufacturer standpoint, it's certainly easier for us or others who have representation in the territory to kind of just team up with them and mitigate some of those costs, which still gives us a present. We can actually allocate more dollars towards advertising and promotion on site. Rather than the cost of logistics and getting gear over there and crates and humans, and which can be pretty costly. So, from the installation standpoint or installer standpoint, I'm not sure there's going to be much that you can do unless someone just says, I'm going to go for the experience of it, just because there's enough coverage in North America as it is between the two shows. But from the manufacturer standpoint, there's definitely cause, especially if you have product in the territory, where you want to have people from home base. Especially also give your distributor some support and let them know, you love them and you're there. And so, that's kind of how we look at it anyways. That was our approach to it.
Yeah, that's a great point. I know the last couple of years that I went, I was very surprised to see the number of vendors that don't have a North American presence that are there. And thus, again, working in Canada, we do get a fair amount of European influence, quote unquote. And to be able to source a couple of vendors that had very limited exposure into Canada or into North America, and some of them had none, but to be able to see some cool products that, again, some of our clients are seeing online, that was interesting. But where it broke down was for, I remember specifically a random projector lift manufacturer. They just had no methodology to get something shipped, except from as like a consumer, like end user situation. But it's an interesting show. I loved it the couple of years I've gone. I'd love to get back. But again, I don't know if it's something that every integrator is going to look at. All right, let's change topics for a second. This comes to us from CE Pro. HDR10 Plus has released a new educational white paper outlining high dynamic range benefits. Go read through this article. It gives you a really good, quick breakdown on the background of Ultra HD and the criticality of HDR, specifically HDR10, and how that works. You can go download that. There's a link in the bottom of the page. Rob, I wanted to start with you on this. HDR10 is one of those wonderful terms I'm going to use. Like, obviously it's a technology, but it's a term that people love to ask about when they're looking at buying a new projector, a new TV, a new media player. I don't know how many consumers I've talked to that have any idea what it actually means, other than they want the sticker on the box. I also don't know a lot of integrators that really understand what it means either. But when it comes to the actual technology, whether they understand it or not, what's the best application for it? Because it kind of varies depending on how you're sourcing it. Does it not?
Absolutely. I mean, there's a lot to unpack there, right? And we could go on for quite some time just on the topic itself. But you kind of start at what is HDR to a customer? Is it those big bright colors that they see on OLEDs and right? And again, what's the source? And when you consider the source, there's a very applicable statement, because a lot of content has been found to be flagged as HDR, and isn't. It's SDR. There are hardware devices out there. Apple TV, for once, defaults everything as HDR, even if it's SDR content. So, and it can affect what you see and how you see it. So they finally give you the option to kind of turn that off and stick with the content based on what it is. But I think until they remove some of those layers of confusion and there's a little bit more consistency around what HDR is as a product, I think you're going to find these wildly varying circumstances where the difference between HDR10, HDR10 plus, the difference between Dolby Vision and nits and this and that, and all of the other things that go along with it, I think are just one of those things where, as you said it best, it's brand on the box. I want to see the brand on the box, and I want to make sure that whatever it is that I'm watching, if it has that, I have it too. And from an application standpoint, there are different platforms and different layers, and not to go too far off into the weeds, but some of my advisors for Mangetar are guys who actually make movies, and they're the guys who produce movies and the guys who mix movies, and some of the stories they tell me about what the studio provides as a deliverable is a single deliverable, and whether that passes through Netflix or HBO or Hulu or right, and all of a sudden you have all these volume levels and all these different requirements that all of these different providers have, but you've got this source of content that isn't always going to be made for that particular outlet, let's say. So your experience, and I think we've all experienced this when it comes to either HDR or even audio, where your experience watching Max on an LG is going to be different than your experience watching Max on a Sony, and that kind of complicates things. And I think by and large, from a consumer and mass layer, it's about brand on the box, and does it pop, and are those colors really saturated, and is it pretty? And brightness becomes an issue, for example, with someone like me, where in my everyday casual viewing room, I get direct sunlight right into the TV, and if I don't have a reflection solution, I'm really not watching much TV. I'm watching reflection. So all those kinds of things, I think, come into play when you're looking at how these technologies are applied and how they're used, even at the deliverable level from the studios. It's like I said, it's a slippery slope and it's a big, deep well. But what we try and do is we try and make sure that we, as a manufacturer, we cover all the bases. So whatever's there, you're going to get. It's just I can't always guarantee you what it's saying you're getting is what you get.
Yeah, that's a great point. Jeremy, how much of an onus is on the integrator community to try to properly explain essentially what Rob just said in a nutshell to a consumer who just wants to buy, a 98-inch TV or a really, really good projector so that they can watch a movie with their family? And, again, they want to know that they've got HDR10 because it's been marketed to them that they've got to have that. Does much of that fall on the integrator, or is it just a very, very short conversation of, your projector's going to have HDR10 in it?
I think it is very much a conversation that the integrator should be comfortable having with the consumers that want to hear it. Some don't want to know anything about the technology, just do the best installation that you can for what I'm giving you on the budget. But there, the visual aspect of a home integrated system probably is the most you'll get feedback from a consumer, I would say, more than the audio. If they can't see dark scenes in a streaming show from, whatever, Apple Plus TV or whatever, they are going to be complaining about the quality of their TV or their projector. You don't want to put them to sleep telling them about grayscale levels and things like that. But if you can explain to them why a certain budget TV might be a better option, or if you have a brand relationship that you trust, then that might be the way to go. I can tell you that the folks that go to Projector Central are bombarded with all of this information, whether they want it or not. We go into great depth about this. Our reviewers are very well schooled in these categories and these technologies, to the point of when I came on board in January, I've gone back to school basically on a lot of terminology that I didn't have to know as much detail on when I was covering the industry in a broader sense. I liked reading this white paper actually, because it does really put the details in there that kind of fill in the gaps where you might catch a terminology and you've got to go look it up, but then you're missing something else. This kind of layers it so beautifully. I don't think it's a new paper though. I'm not sure why it got posted recently. It seems like it's actually pretty well.
It's been around. Yeah, it's been around.
Yeah, it's like 2021 maybe. It's referring to 4K as if it's a new technology, which I would contend that most consumers do know what 4K is. Like, they may not be able to explain it, but they know it's better than the last thing. And so they're probably going to be more aware of, I want a 4K TV at a certain size than they're going to know anything about HDR or ever heard of it. And then some people may not even be comfortable changing their presets on their TV. Let's just call it TV and not talk the projector category. But, even as someone who's aware of those things, my TV, my LG TV does updates, firmware updates. I'll get a menu item that pops up, and I have to either say go away or just go ahead and do the update. And it annoys you so much that you are pretty much forced into the update. And I found that a lot of those are those presets, and I think that's where consumers may be experiencing these changes to the video quality without realizing how it's happening, like what changed. Like all of a sudden you don't have a sports setting, maybe you have a gaming setting that wasn't there before, and you don't realize it at first until I can't, like, literally, like, I'm watching Severance and it's such a dark show, and it's crushing everything, I can't see anything, and I go into my settings because I'm like, I've got to figure out what to do here, because I can't, my TV's terrible now. I love this TV when I was watching live sports, but now I hate it. And I think that happens. I think people are forced into it if they're comfortable in their remote menu. But I do think having an integrator that can help guide them through would be a huge thing. And then if they're buying at retail, hopefully the retail sales floor, I found that they've gotten better as things have sort of slowed down from a technology, development curve. You can go into a Best Buy, at least mine, and they kind of know what they're talking about now. It's not like they're just hiring a million guys who don't know. So hopefully those who care are learning from the quote unquote experts, the people that are selling this technology or integrating it.
I can tell you as a manufacturer, what we get are customer service calls where people have taken a deep dive into the menus, and all of a sudden they call us up saying, why does my picture look like crap? And it's because they have gone into a place they have no idea what they're doing and they're drowning. And then they're calling us saying, can you help? And it becomes, kind of an onus on us to say, okay, where did you go? And then they can't explain where they went. And you ultimately just have to say, hit the reset, get back to where you were when you bought it. Yep. and then let's see how we can help you in other ways. Because the first thing they want to do is they're watching a disc and they think it looks like crap and they're changing it. And then it really looks bad. And then they're calling us saying your player's, got a problem.
Rob, let me ask you this just before we move on. In your professional kind of opinion, do most integrators have a handle on the variances in all of these codecs and all of these technologies across different outlets? Are they aware of this, or is this something that most integrators, let alone consumers, really don't fully understand?
I mean, if you're talking about the Best Buy blue shirt consumer, they're not going to mess with it too much. If you're talking about integrators who really have taken the time to understand what it is that they're selling their customer, and they know the products that they're selling their customer, they're usually pretty well versed. But, I can't say there aren't a lot of integrators out there that are just, smaller versions of, let me put this in your house and install it for you. And they're not really going to the levels they should to make sure that the experience the consumer has is what they're paying for. Or, everything is subjective. What you see is subjective. What you hear is subjective. What may sound great to you doesn't sound great to me, or what looks great to you may not look great to me. And I think it really depends on, do you know your product and do you know your customer, and are you making the right match to begin with? You're trying to sell somebody a product that you kind of know is not going to be their cup of tea, but you need to move that product or whatever it may be. You're not doing yourself or your customers any favors. And we get some, we do see some of that where that certainly exists. It certainly exists in the world.
Can I point out something cool that I just learned from this white paper at the end that I had no idea existed? Was the HDR10 Plus adaptive. Did you get down that far, where it's like the ambient light sensor situation? So that's a future tech that I think kind of a buried gem of this paper, where I don't think anything exists out in the market yet on that, where you have a light sensor. Have not.
No, it's
Have not seen it.
supposed to be coming,
Okay.
but
So yeah, Rob, like that's it. That's that use case you're talking about with the ambient light, where that could be a really cool feature down the road.
it's going to be the thing that saves those dark scenes.
Yeah.
All right, gentlemen, let's hit a story that comes to us from PC World. It's a bit of a follow-up to an article that we covered a couple of episodes ago on Sony's exit from consumer recordable Blu-rays. This is Ben Patterson, the senior writer at TechHive, who said, no, Sony's Blu-ray exit doesn't spell the end for physical media, just like that fun story of I'm not dead yet. We're almost there, but not yet.
Not yet.
When everybody saw that, I saw it all over my social media feeds, obviously all over the news that, they were pulling out, it's over, it's done. This goes into detail about the fact that, well, they did quit the recordable Blu-ray business. That has very little to do with packaged movies and the Blu-ray disc, ROM discs that are pressed by factories for big studio productions. Rob, I'm going to come back and start with you on this one because this is really in your wheelhouse more than anybody else's here.
It is in the pond in which I swim and live, yes.
A little bit. When you see even just the basic report that came out, I think it was like a year ago, that Best Buy was pulling physical media off their shelves. When you see that as a manufacturer of Blu-ray players, what does that do? Is this community that buys not only your products, but any of the, high-res 4K Blu-ray players, they hit me as the vinyl stalwarts who never left vinyl, and they're never going to leave vinyl because they love physical media, not only from the nostalgia that comes with putting something in and having a library that you can look at on the wall, but also the quality differences, again, that we kind of touched on with the HDR10 conversation. Is that industry going anywhere in the foreseeable future?
No, but you love these lots to unpack things. So
sorry, I like big questions.
No, it's good. Listen, it's great. So, here's what I would say. I see those articles too. I see LG has left. It's over. Sky's falling. You're done. And I have a little bit more of a pragmatic approach to this, right? So, the parent company of Mangetar is an OEM that has been making physical media players for a very long time for a lot of big brands, a lot of brands that we all know and love. So we kind of get it, right? And we have a little different perspective. We have a little bit more of a global perspective, and then being able to see some of our customers from that aspect, from the regular kind of jokey public player, not the premium stuff that Mangetar does. So we really have a kind of a good feel on it. And we're always like, for North America, I'm looking at NPD, right? And I see this article, LG's done, and this is just another death blow. And then I go look at NPD and I go, well, let's see. Sony did 500,000 Blu-ray players in the U.S. in 2024. LG did 17,000. If I was LG, I'd run too. No question about it, right? So I get it from that standpoint. LG never had a dog in that fight to begin with. They've always just they put a Blu-ray player out because LG had to have a Blu-ray player, and they never really focused on doing anything. There's no magic pixie dust between it and an LG TV, and all of these things that where the magic is supposed to be. They just kind of put a player out there, and that's kind of specific to them. But what you see is you start to see a shift, right? Yes, you get the physical media faithful. And one of the things that we pride ourselves on at Mangetar is yes, we do discs. We do discs of almost every format you can imagine. But we're also a network media player. We're also, you plug a 16 terabyte drive into our USB port. So, and you can play whatever you want, right? So we get, we're kind of a utilitarian thing. We do SACD, we do DVDA. So we do all of these other things that allow us to be more than just a quote unquote Blu-ray player. And that's one of the messages that I'm working on with this company is to make sure that we're perceived more as a utility kind of widespread player than we are just a place to stick your discs in and have a great experience. And it becomes kind of this clickbaity thing, as I saw you spoke about before in an earlier episode. I think that there's there is certainly an audience out there when you look at what Best Buy and what Target has done. Best Buy sells its floor space, right? So whether you walk in, you have the Apple section and the Samsung section and this section and that section, right? So if I'm looking at my 40 by 20 square foot space in my Best Buy floor, and I'm looking at discs, which are loss leader, kind of low margin, no margin product, and I can take that real estate and I can turn it into something and sell it to Sonos for a lot of money and have a higher margin, done. Right. Mm-hmm. And that's cause and effect by the Amazons of the world, who I can go to Amazon and get any disc that I want. Now with Amazon, oftentimes same day. And then you have these niche studios like Arrow and Shout Factory and Criterion that are constantly releasing these things and changing how they're productizing a movie, right? Number one, you get your disc, you get your Blu-ray disc, and you get your digital code. So if you casually want to watch it in the living room on your TV and stream it, you're all good. You got your movies anywhere, you're done. You want to go up into the loft, or you want to go into your theater room and you want to watch the full res uncompressed, bad boy, you've got that too. So they're covering you in that ways, but they're also taking these packages and making add-on goods and wares. So when you go buy a Labyrinth 4K 30th anniversary edition, you're now getting all of these cool ancillary items with that disc that make it a piece of merch. And the same thing kind of transcends from a music standpoint in vinyl and those types of things, where it used to be when you wanted to support a band, you go buy an album and you'd buy a t-shirt. And the album now isn't sold at a store. It's now part of merch. And it's a different viewpoint, and it's packaged and marketed differently as a piece of band merch, not necessarily an album. You want the band's music, you can go on Spotify and everywhere else and stream it. But the album is meant to be a piece of merchandise, and they're actually putting more around, wrapping more around those products that make it more for the consumer. And that's, I think, some of the resurgence you're starting to see in a lot of this physical media is because they're dressing it up and putting more to it and with it. And then you have the diehards, for Mangetar. We've got, the majority of our customers have very large physical media libraries, and they're not going to let them go. And I'm, different from other platforms that are out there, whether they're fully uncompressed or compressed. You can go to look at a movie and it's gone, even if you paid for it. And with us, I'm not going to come into your house in the middle of the night and steal your Blu-ray. It's not going to happen, right? So once it's yours, and you keep it. And if you decide you want to rip it and store it, we'll play that too. So it's a very vibrant community. I don't know that Sony's disappointed in 500,000 sales, for 2024. And these are just your standard, $200 mass market Blu-ray players. But that's a fairly healthy number for what everybody says is just kind of dead and see you later, bye. For us, when I came into Mangetar in June of last year, I've been incredibly surprised at the amount of business the company has been able to do and what we've been able to build kind of brick by brick over the past 7 or 8 months. We're moving some units, and people are really about it. And it's good for us. I think it's good for the economy as far as the Blu-ray disc economy. And I think that, it would not surprise me to see a lot of the streaming platforms as well kind of feeding the machine about the death of Blu-ray, because it's good for business for them.
Yeah, that's a great point. Jeremy, do you notice on, your platform, right? Do you notice that the enthusiasts that are looking at projection, are they all in on streaming, or have they, come back around to disc being that highest performance quality that they can get to experience things in their, in their media room?
Yeah, I think it runs the gamut, but we always include physical media in our reviews as a comparison. And that's for those consumers who are the tweakier ones, the ones that are really into all of the finer details, and they want to have options with their libraries that they have. But then, we've also got a whole contingent of consumers who are there for the lifestyle projectors, the little streaming, lower lumen projectors that are out there.
Picnic projectors.
Yeah. I mean, and those are fun and they're great for the category, but no physical media attached, right?
No, right.
So that's there's both of them there, but there's definitely a community there that loves their libraries of physical media and wants a high quality player. And so I think like what Rob's saying is true, that it's there. It may be a niche, but it's also very it's very healthy. There's still investment going on there. it's like the letterboxed community, the people that are really into their films and all that. So it's a growing, vibrant community, I think, still, even though it's not what it once was from a retail standpoint, from a, box store availability situation.
Yeah, that's a great point. All right, gentlemen, we are going to leave it there. Thank you both so much for joining us. Rob, if people want to connect with you, learn more about Mangetar, where can they do that?
You can hit us up on www.magnetarusa.com. We have our dealer locator, and you can buy direct and learn about our products. And then be on the lookout for the new stuff that we have coming that is broadening the landscape of what Magnetar's current real estate is.
Excellent. Love to hear it. Jeremy, if people want to connect with you, learn more about Projector Central, where can they do that?
Well, go to projectorcentral.com to get started. If you want to find me, probably LinkedIn's the best place, or just email Jeremy at projectorcentral.com. I am going to be launching a podcast soon, so we're going to be talking to our reviewers. That's how we're going to start off. So you get a little bit behind the scenes of how they did their reviews, what they learned. If you don't want to read 4,000 words, you want to just listen to kind of a summary about 20 minutes long. We're going to start doing those probably next week. So going to be good to get back behind the mic on my own show again.
Excellent. Can't wait to hear it. All right. Thank you again for joining us. If you'd like to connect with me, you can find me on Twitter at Matt D. Scott and most other social platforms. But more importantly, please visit AVNation.tv, where you'll find this show as well as a wide variety of other shows with all the verticals that we cover. When you visit the website, please take a moment to check out our supporters. We are extremely thankful for their support and ask that you check them out as well. Thanks again for watching. That's all the time we have for this episode of ResiWeek,
the network for the AV industry.
What are you listening to?
This
is AV.
This
is AVNation.
This is AVNation.